Hey everyone, welcome to It Tastes Different Game Reviews. In this episode, we're going to talk about Triangle Strategy. Triangle Strategy is a tactical role-playing game or strategy game. It is developed by Art Dink. It is published by Nintendo everywhere except for in Japan, where it was published by Square Enix. It came out on the Nintendo Switch on March 4th of 2022, and it is a single-player game. So this is a tactical strategy. If you're used to tactical strategy games, you can think of stuff like Final Fantasy Tactics is a good idea, and games like that. And it's got the graphical style of Octopath Traveler. Actually, I think it's made by the same people, I want to say. So they got that same art style, which I really like. I find that pretty nice looking. But we're going to go around and see what everybody thought of Triangle Strategy. So let's go ahead and start with Patrick. What did you think of this game?
I'm going to try not to crap on it a little too much, but it takes a long time to get to do anything in this game, and that's its biggest downfall is if you don't have patience to read. If you don't have, it's fully voiced, so you don't really got to read anything, but if you don't have patience to listen to the story unfold, you're going to have a really hard time with this game. Like to the point to where I was like, 2 hours later, and I'm like, am I going to get to play this game? Literally, am I going to get to play this game? In my opinion, you really don't actually really get to play the game until chapter 6. And that's when you actually get to start doing more things rather than just sitting around going, let me put down my controller and let this story play out. I mean, some of the stories are so long. Some of the in between the battle arcs are so long that my Switch controller will go to sleep and the screen will darken while I'm waiting for them to finish telling the story. So outside of that, it's got some really cool aspects to it. It's tactical RPG, tactical strategy, I mean, it's got some cool stuff to it. It just starts way too slow. So fair warning, it does get good. It does get fun, but you have to get past chapter 4 at least. Chapter 5, things start to unfold and you get to do a lot more. I struggle with the art style a little bit just because sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference in the characters at that small of a screen. You've got at some point you get 7 or 8 characters on the screen and you're like, I think that's my mage. Oh no, that's the other person. I think that's my archer. Oh no, dang it, that's the shield guy, And so at some point, it gets a little bit pain in the butt. You're gonna have to memorize portraits versus characters because at the bottom of the screen, the turn order is just portraits, and I'm like, okay, that guy coming up next is this guy, and when it comes up, I'm like, oh no, that was the other character. Damn it, that just screwed my strategy all up, and things like that. So you have to think through it, and you have to pay attention. You have to memorize whose portrait is whose and all that kind of stuff. But it is fun, and I'm enjoying it. It just way too slow story. What about you, Shane? What are your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, there's not a lot me and you were dead agreed on, but god dang, we were dead agreed on this. The story pacing is this game's biggest problem by far. The combat is fantastic. The strategy elements of it is fantastic. The only problem with the combat portion is just like you said, getting that picture down to the pixel character and making sure that you don't get them mixed up, because I did that several times at the beginning. The pacing outside of the actual gameplay is so long and drawn out. It was almost 2 hours for chapter 1, and it was one battle. That was it. It's literally, it's like going into a Marvel movie that you just don't get to do anything in. And then finally you get to do one thing. Every chapter was like that all the way up to 5. but the downfalls, the downfalls of the game are made up for by what's really good about the game. The good, the characters are really neat. The art style, I absolutely love the art style. Ace Froth is probably my favorite map layout. I just love the water, the lava flows with the ice and all that stuff. I really like that. It's just a shame that the pacing on this thing is so drawn out, and it's just constant story. And there's nothing wrong with a good story, but god dang, give me something to do sometimes. Because if I'm only playing one battle each chapter, that's just not cool, man. That's not, especially when the combat is that fun. When you get into chapter 5, and I had just got there because it was killing me to play this game. I skipped a lot of the story stuff because it's just so drawn out. The voice acting is not bad. I'm a voice acting snob, just like Pat's a visual snob. I'm a very snob on the voice acting. All the voice actors were fine. Some were really good. Some of them, from some of the animes you've watched. The main character was the worst one. It was somebody's son that got hired for the job to support his coke habits, I think. So I don't know. But I do know that the game, if they would fix that pacing in a sequel and give you more to do throughout the game, this thing would be so awesome. Really, really awesome, because I'll let Nick kind of go into the tactic stuff, but it was really, really neat how they set everything up where you can, position yourself in certain ways and just do mondo damage. So, but anyways, I'll quit rambling. Nick, what about you, bud? How'd you feel?
Yeah, I really like this game, and I would agree with you guys too on the pacing of the story. The story is good. I mean, it gets interesting for sure, and you're wondering what's going to happen. It's just it takes a long time to get there, and exactly what you guys said. The one of the best parts about this game is the combat. The combat is so great. It's such great tactical strategy combat. Like the story, and again, what you guys said with the downfalls, like the story's so drawn out that you really just want to go into a battle. Please, can I go into a battle now? Because I really want to play that aspect of the game, because that is so much fun. Like, yeah, story, kingdoms are battling. We get it. Can I fight again? Like, that's what you really want to do. So you just can't wait until that battle section happens. You're like, yes, I can finally go in and start setting up my characters, because you get to set up your characters, and there's just all sorts of stuff, right? There's much like tactical strategy games like this, like in Final Fantasy Tactics and stuff, you have elevation comes into play, and you can put down, your ice mage could put down ice, and you can light oil on fire, and very environmental things, and attacking from the back does more damage, and various things like that. So you got to strategically think, well, where am I going to place these? I want to place my archer up high, and stuff like that, so they get a better advantage point and do more damage. And then, so that's the fun part of it, and it's just fun to play the combat. The combat is definitely the shining portion of this game is the combat, and I love the visual style. I like the way that Octopath Traveler looked, and I like how this one looks, and it looks very similar in design ways. But yeah, some of the maps are really cool looking, some of the environments, and I really like the music. I mean, there's some really nice music in this game too, depending on places that you go and stuff. They have some really good musical tunes in here. But like you guys said, everything is voice acted, so it's not. And the nice thing too is everything's voice acted, and when these long parts come, you can hit the auto button. There is an auto button that basically lets them voice act, and it just presses the A button for you, basically, in a sense, to go past the text boxes of what they're saying. So you basically, when I did and which I'm sure you guys did too, or at least Patrick, I know Shane skipped a lot of it, but you just hit that auto button, set your controller down, and sit back and listen. Because for me, especially, I want to know what the story is going on, so I'm going to sit there and listen to it. But yes, there are parts where it is very drawn out. It's not bad per se. It's just like, come on, can we end this so I can get to a battle? Because that's what I want to do. But yeah, once it gets to chapter 5, that's really when the game starts to really open up, and you see, like, you get the idea of what's going to happen and how everything's kind of starting to play out. And you're like, yeah, now now everything's going down, right? Things are getting crazy now. Now we're getting into the good stuff. And this game is 21 chapters, so it is a pretty long game. And they do have side stuff. We can talk about the side stuff, the encampments and various things you can do there and stuff like that. But overall, I think this game is really good. Do you guys want to talk about some of the other things like the encampment and stuff you can do there?
All I got to say is, why the hell isn't the auto dialogue on by default? I mean, that seems like the big,
Yep.
Who wants to sit there and be like, okay, they finished talking, push A. Oh, they finished talking, push A. I don't know who in their right mind is doing that. And I mean, maybe if you're hearing impaired, right, and you want to read, but I think that should be an accessibility option. I really was, because it doesn't stay on to the whole game. It's per scenario, per scene. So every time a new scene pops up, you got to hit that right trigger so that they'll autoplay. And some scenes you just can't autoplay. You got to sit there and listen to their dialogue and hit the A button. And it's usually right before you're about to enter combat or something,
Well,
yeah,
they make you do it manually each time to make sure you're still awake.
Yeah, you're still awake. I mean, I some of the stuff that's getting to me, and maybe it gets better in the longer you play the game, but none of the side stuff seems to be anything but adds flavor to the story. All the side stuff I've seen so far has just been, okay, we know why Roland is the way he is, and we know why this person is the way they are, and so on and so forth. And you're like, okay, it just adds flavor to the story. And I don't know if you progress further, side things will open up other paths to do battle or other paths for things like that. But, and all of the character advancement stories are the same way. It's just watching something unfold.
I believe it's just it all works its way towards your relationship builds,
yeah,
because I believe I'm not to that point yet, but I believe if you build relationships with character A, surrounding characters that they're familiar with will join you at some point, because that's just what
they do talk
like.
about that, like your what is it, your conviction, right?
Yes.
Everything you do in the game, you will have points in where you will get dialogue choices, and that strengthens the main character's conviction and kind of sways you depending on what you decide to do and what characters. I'm assuming which characters are going to become available, because like these guys were saying, there's character stories, and that's basically where you can learn more about the characters that you're with, as well as get additional characters that will join your crusade or your army. And but yeah, so far all the story side quest ones seem to be, at the moment, just more story bits to kind of learn what's going on in another town right now with these characters and stuff like that. So it's good, and of course those are optional, so you don't have to do them. But if you want to learn more about some of the other characters, which I think they do a pretty good job of making you feel like kind of rooting for them, right? I feel like Roland is like, I like that character, I like that character as a character in the game. I'm like, I like him, like he's cool. And then like, some of the other characters, and I don't want to spoil anything, but some of the other characters, you kind of root for them and stuff happens and you're like, oh man, that kind of sucks, but or whatever may happen in the game. But so I think the game allows you to get invested in it. It's just, yes, the story is very, there's a lot they want to say, and it's a little too much to, they want to feed you, all that dialogue and story, just like as much, cramming in there as much as they can.
Yeah,
it's like a movie that tells you, that has like a 30 minutes of an intro, like Star Wars, right. But think of that going like 30 minutes long just to tell you what's going on.
Right. It's like, it's up until like chapter 6 that every chapter has a flow to it. There's story, then there's exploration, then there's combat. I mean, every chapter seems to be that way. It's like story, exploration, and then combat. And exploration just lets you roam around the town, talking to people, gaining more insight into things that help with conversations that you may have, whether it unlocks additional dialogue or helps strengthen your convictions and things like that when you're talking or trying to convince people to do something. And then also pick up hidden items. You're looking for the little glint on the screen. You're like, oh, there's something over there. Let me go loot that or whatever. And that's where the screen, the rotation screen gets a little wonky on me, in my opinion, on some of that stuff, because you're rotating the screen to try to look around every little corner so you don't miss any little hidden gem or hidden equipment, because it is a strategy game with individual characters, and you spend points, you spend materials and coin to basically level them up when you do what they call encampment. Encampment lets you do things from like buy from merchants, do training battles, do the kudos. You get kudo points in battles for doing things like backstabbing or pinning a guy in between you and another guy and hitting him, so you get to hit him twice. You backstab him into one guy who then hits him, and and it's like you get kudos for doing things that are basically things that you should do, like attacking from high ground. Just things like that will get you kudos to buy, like what is it, quint moves or something like that. I can't remember what the term was, but it's a special move that basically you can do once per battle. It costs a point, and things like that. And then also you level up your character. I think every character has like 3 levels, and with each level has like things like increase their damage, increase their health, increase their resilience to this damage, and increase their armor and all different things.
You can promote
like
them, and then you can also advance the weapons too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's 3 levels of advancement and stuff. So, but it costs like materials that don't unlock until you progress the story to promote them from like swordsman to something else to veteran, and so there's a lot involved to what you can do during encampment phases and things like that.
There's a lot to it,
and you can do equipment entirely. Yeah. I mean, there's equipment you can equip onto people. It just increase their magic damage, give them health, things like that. So it's a typical RPG that's got a party mechanic, like strategy game. Because beginning of every battle, you get to put your troops out where you want them. You're like, okay, I get to have 6 guys out this round, or seven guys. And you're like, okay, I'm going to put my tank here. And you kind of got to look around the map because you have to understand what the battle requirements are. All right. Like there's one battle where it tells you just get this one guy to the other side of the map, make sure he survives. And you're like, is it going to be just this onslaught? And, and things happen and, stuff like that. So you have to pay attention to the scenario requirements because they're not always just kill all the enemies on the screen. Sometimes you have to do this or that or, things like that. So it's not just set up your chessboard, whack each other until one of you's got the last troop left on the board, But it's fun. Combat is the best part of this game. Unfortunately, until you're in chapter 6, it's 95% story. It's 90% story, 2%. It's more like 94% story, 1% exploration, and 5% combat. I mean, it's like really badly lopsided. But they're trying to deliver a lot of information to you in a short amount of time. Not short amount of time, a really long amount of time, I should say. But they're just trying to give you all the backstory of this world that you're in and what's happening and all this kind of stuff. So I understand the story building, but they should have paced it a lot quicker. Like it should have been like a mix of 50-50, 50% story, 50% combat. It may have been a little bit more tolerable in the beginning, but you have hours upon hours in the first part of the game if you want to know the lore. If you don't want to know the lore, you can just hold that right shoulder button, skip all of it, or press start button and skip the entire scene and just move on but you're going to miss out on aspects on why you're going into battle, why you're doing this, why you're doing that. So it behooves you to listen to the story.
Yeah, and don't forget you get choices with the characters that you're speaking with too. That's going to build your convictions with each other. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, I get through all the BS, but am I missing something on my answer that's going to help me build up that conviction? Which I know I foobarred several of them, but it's just
you can push the left button. And they'll tell you it'll give you a log of what was said up until your choice that you have to say something.
Yeah. But then I had to read back.
Yeah. And as you talk to people too, right. And as you talk to people, I mean, I would listen to the story because as you talk to people and learn about the characters, that's really going to, for you, because it really doesn't matter what you pick as far as those conviction things. It depends on you as the player. Right. So listening and learning about the different characters that you're going to be interacting with the game is going to make it better for you to make a choice that you want to make. Right. You might, there might be a certain character you're like, I hate that guy. Right. So like, screw him. I'm going to screw him.
Stop being a crybaby and just do what I said.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, all around, we'll go ahead and I guess we'll wrap this up here. But I think all around for me personally, we bought this on the Switch. This is a $60 game. I think it's definitely worth it. I think it's a lot of fun. If you like tactical strategy games, and we don't get a lot of those these types, right? These types of tactical strategies. We get things like XCOM and various things like that, but these like smaller Final Fantasy Tactics type strategy games, we don't get a lot of those very often. So it was nice for one to come around, and I think it's a lot of fun. If you like those types of games, there is a lot of story here, but I think you'll have a lot of fun with the combat and the strategy portions. What do you guys think? You guys got anything else to say on that?
I'm
torn. I'm torn on the $60
it's a hard
price
one.
tag.
It really is, because you love everything about it, but the one thing an RPG is supposed to be is a fantasy that they put you through, but it almost puts you to sleep because there's too much of it. So I don't know. I don't know how to judge this. I think if you have more patience in me, which is probably not hard, you will enjoy the game even more. But I love the visuals. I love the combat, the characters. It's just story progression, which is the biggest killer. It's the weakest link. So get at your own risk. But I can tell you this, it looks really good on my new TV back there. I was worried about how, because I haven't hooked the Switch up to it till this one. So I was like, yes, it looks awesome. Play at your own risk, but like Pat said, just hit the right bumper or R1. I can't never tell on the Switch because I went back to the Xbox and I'm backing up through.
It's a right shoulder button, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because theirs are like RZ and something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
game's story pacing is its biggest downfall as far as the pacing, right? And it's just too much at the beginning and not enough of what you like about it, which is the combat. But other than that, though, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening to us here. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notifications to stay up to date. So also, make sure to comment down below. Have you played this game? Are you thinking about playing this game? Do you have any questions? We could definitely answer for them. Or if you played it, do you like it? Or is this not your type of game? Let us know what you think. So, but thanks again. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.